not saying it's unhealthy, it's a small snack. But this idea, because it comes from a health food store and it's in a package, doesn't make it food, a healthy food. I tell people, when you go to the supermarket, just shop the perimeter. Don't go up and down the aisle. That's it. What's on it? You have your produce and your protein. That's it. If we look at before technology took place, how people ate, and I'm not talking about going 5,000 years back to cave people. Let's go back a couple of hundred years. There was no such thing as packaged food. There was no such thing as protein bars. There was no such thing as soy milk. These things didn't exist. We evolved together with the land. We evolved together with the pathogens and the microbes and the bacteria. We are in sync with what we come from. And the fact that we now have a type of technology that says we can take fruit from California and ship it all the way to Maine. So people in the dead of winter in Maine can eat some kind of warm weather fruit in February. It's wonderful, but it may not be in the best interest of your body. Does that make sense to people? You know? The Native Americans evolved with this land. We didn't. Most of us are from other genetic sources. Most of us are probably from Europe at this point. But they had the peanuts, cassava beans, they ate buffalo, peanuts, whatever was on the land, right? If you came from Ireland, you had a different type of land that you ate food from than if you came from Romania, which is different than people who lived on the equator, which is different than people in the Maasai in Tanzania and Kenya live on blood, meats, and milk of the animals they're raised. So we evolved differently. I'll just give you a step back and give you another understanding about genetics. Evolution, as we move together with the land, takes a while for genetic changes to occur. We're all aware of that. The gene trait that creates sickle cell anemia in this country prevents malaria if you're living in Africa. That's how that gene came to be. It was to protect them from that disease. And they don't get sickle cell in Africa like you get it here. Because they have to combat with malaria there, so it's part of their immune system. They don't have it here, they're in a different territory, they're supposed to do different things. So we have to be somewhat aware that we cannot separate ourselves from the rest of how the world evolved. Now granted, because of transportation technology, none of us are in our post-genetic home. So the question is, what do you do to eat soundly? So again, I go back to no processed foods. None. What is it? Everyone needs a certain amount of protein, fat, and complex carbohydrates. What are your proteins? Basically, you have your animal source of protein, which are your highest sources, and then there are vegetarian sources of protein, such as your nuts and your beans. They're not as high in ratio as far as per pound or per ounce, but they have them. My personal philosophy is whatever works for you, works for you. If vegetarian works for you, great, do that. If it doesn't, don't do it.
But you have to know what works for you and the reason works for you because
right.
That's what we're doing.
So the question is, what are you doing as far as the commonality? You got to get rid of all processed food. Number one.
Okay, now that's not realistic for me. I don't cook. That's my problem. I don't cook. So for you to say to me, get rid of all processed food, that's an unrealistic thing to say.
I'm going to play devil's advocate with you for a second.
Okay.
If someone says to me, I want to get in shape, but I don't want to exercise, what do I do with that? If someone says, I'm a diabetic, hey, I want to beat diabetes, but I don't want to give up sugar, what do I say to them? You know, there's got to be a willingness on someone's own behalf to take care of their own health and well-being. And if we're not willing to, if you want to eat out, and do you eat out at all? Okay, so what kind of meals do you prepare for yourself, if any?
Well, for breakfast, I'll eat breakfast bar, or I'll have biscuits on vegetables.
Okay.
Something.
Great. And lunch?
At lunch, I usually have salad or yogurt, fruit, or something.
Okay, and dinner?
And
Okay. So, here's what I can say to you. Once a week, hard-boiled 10 eggs at once. Then you have your protein for breakfast. You can have hard-boiled eggs. Put a slice of 7-grain toast in the oven. put some olive oil on it, add a slice of tomato, avocado, some greens. There's some protein and some carbs for your breakfast. And that's about as simple as you can get. This is here and talk about a protein bar for breakfast or instant drink for breakfast. Now, I work with mixed medical foods for people who are deficient in lots of things and are really sick. So I'll give them a protein because it's easily absorbable, or because they have such a bad GI tract, they can't digest anything, so I use medical foods, they call them. But I don't promote those as a meal ever to people if they can eat. As far as lunch goes, you can always pop into a Chinese restaurant, get some brown rice, steamed vegetables, with a little bit of shrimp. Or have them cook a little egg. Salad, has no real nutritional value. It's basically fiber, water, and some minerals. Calorically, it has nothing.
But, somebody puts veggies in the salad.
Well, that's different. Now you're talking about vegetable salad versus a salad. Salad's usually with greens, with my interpretation. So if there are a whole bunch of vegetables on it, you throw a couple of hard-boiled eggs, you have a Cobb salad, okay. But you may not be getting enough complex carbohydrates for your body to sufficiently, A, produce energy, and B, what they call, have you heard the term glycemic index? It's been kind of hot term the last 5 years. Okay. Do you know what that means? Do you want to know what it means? You may not want to go into the science part, but basically, when you eat food, the body has a response where it has to release chemicals, A, to break the food down, and B, it has to release chemicals to take those nutrients to different parts of the body and utilize them. So when you talk about the glycemic index, they're talking about the insulin response. Insulin is a compound produced by the pancreas that takes all the sugar molecules from the food you eat and delivers it to every cell of the body. That cell then takes that sugar and produces a compound called ATP. That's the gasoline of the body. That's where you make, that's your energy. Okay? Is everybody clear? So anytime I say something, please raise your hand, because I don't know what people's different education levels are, and sometimes I rattle. So just interfere and stop me. So what happens is, if you eat a tremendous amount of food where the sugar levels from the food you eat rushes into the system, your body has to produce much more insulin to counterbalance it. Sugar and insulin must always be in ratio. So what happens is, okay, you eat a meal, we had some candy bars, and we had a lot of Halloween candy and nothing else. Sugar rushes in faster than it should. The body has to produce enough insulin to match it. What happens in case it's not a problem? If you keep eating meals and snacks where you're doing that, that mechanism of insulin production to match the sugar gets skewed. And when you have that over time, you start to develop insulin resistance. Glycemic index means finding the optimal level of this kind of influx of food, sugar, protein that matches the insulin level optimally for the individual. So if this is your range of something, you want to be right dead center, whatever that range is, whether it be cholesterol or whatever blood thing. Same as eating foods. You want to be in a dead center range where your insulin response is the most beneficial and the least harmful to your existence. Glycemic index is the fancy term for that. So they have a glycemic index that ranges